Pinkerton's Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outreterre. It is not intended for children.
I got an odd one for you today, Control. It's, well, just listen. So after the incident with Alexander and the doppelganger in Illinois, I was planning on a trip to Ohio. That's where Jim had seen a lot of the threads from the Verum Vicio meeting up, and I suspected multiple doppelgangers were gathered there. Jim kept an eye on them during our trip. They didn't leave the same basic area. But before I went, something occurred to me. I got in touch with Violet and confirmed that she wasn't carrying. Considering the number of enemies I was making, this was a problem. And there were other things I wanted to prepare. Maybe Jack's rubbing off on me. So I delayed the journey to Ohio for a few days. It's not like anything time sensitive was going on. And if they moved, well, I can have Jim track them again. Well, okay, flash forward a week and there's a knock on my door. I opened it and nobody was there, but there was a CD with a note that said, "Listen ASAP," in my handwriting. I touched the CD with the ring of Dispel to make sure there wasn't any sort of curse on it and listened to the whole thing. It, well, listen for yourself. You know, Detective Russo, you really set me back after that business in Illinois. You and that California Pinkerton. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that you're good at your job, seeing as, well, you're me. But, well, you've put me in a bit of a bind. I needed the Heart of Kronos, Detective. It was the only thing that could get me home. And you know what? You're right. There really isn't any other way into the building not being watched by those clockwork weirdos. I left that grandstanding magician behind. Now I admit he knew his stuff and it was the right move to get in touch with him, but he wouldn't shut up about revenge. It was starting to become bothersome. I did some thinking on my own and I came to a few conclusions. Without the heart, I'm stuck here. With you around, it would be difficult for me to move freely. And Alexander had a point. You're really annoying, Detective. I think it's fair to say that drastic measures needed to be taken, so I came up with a plan. You were my biggest obstacle, but in a lot of ways, you're just me. A little younger, maybe, a couple of different decisions, but getting back a few years of youth shouldn't be too much of a problem. With you out of the way, I could take over. Then I'd have the resources of the paranormal Pinkertons at my disposal, and I could give the Grand Masons an inside man. They might be more willing to trust me if I could give them Control's home address. So that was the new plan. Follow you around, get your routine, then kill you quietly and take your place. Worst comes to worst, I have a ready-made life set up in this world. And, will you let me be honest here for a moment, Sean? A little vulnerable. I was curious. How did I join the paranormal Pinkertons of all things? What was that version of me like? I needed to understand. So, for the past week, I've tracked you. You're probably thinking there's no way I could have followed you without you knowing. You are a trained detective, right? But you have no idea of the things that I, meaning that you, are capable of doing. I guess that was my takeaway for most of this, Sean. You're just the missed potential version of me. I'll give you some credit, Sean. It became obvious quickly that you knew how to be careful. Who was it who taught you again? Tom Stretcher? Oh, yes. I know all about old Tom. In fact, we knew each other quite well back in my world. In the end, I killed him with my bare hands. I'll give the old guy this. He was a tough old bastard when I knew him. Did you know that he's the reason I lost this eye? It was a bitter fight. Led to a promotion for me, though. So he was your mentor, huh? It explains a few things about you. It was an interesting experience trying to see what makes you tick and how it was different than what made me tick. But everything you did, it was all so mundane, so disappointing. You bought meals, sitting on your own. You talked with your girlfriend each day. You went to church on Sunday. It's the church that made me start to really reflect. Why the church, Sean? Come on. I know you're not stupid. You know what those hypocrites are really like. But that's what you pin your hopes on? Well, maybe you don't know. You're still young. You know how many high-ranking clergy are secret Freemasons or even Grand Masons? Let's just say that the people in charge aren't who you think they are. Then there's Cynthia. You lost her. I'm not surprised. Cynthia's a woman who needs a man who will provide for her, and I'm afraid you aren't that man. Oh, I know what happened to you, Sean. The same thing happened to me. But maybe that's where we're different. Ah, yes. I see it now. That must be the moment. The moment you and I made our choices. When Cynthia said it was over, you ran away, like a coward, like a weakling. What a disappointing decision. I refused, of course. I turned to other sources. I said it back to you in Illinois, remember? I did what had to be done to live the life I wanted to live. You'd probably think what I did was terrible, but all I did was pay the price. And you? You ran off into the woods and did whatever that old curmudgeon told you. Was it worth it? I've seen your apartment. I've been watching you all week. You're pathetic, Sean. At least compared to what you could be. I'm telling you all of this, Sean, because something happened yesterday, and, well, you know what it is, don't you? You drove out to a restaurant in Hackettstown and you met someone over there. That's when everything started to change. I was watching from a distance. You're clever enough that I can't keep too close by. There was something strange about that woman. Violet Hunter, Alexander said her name was. He'd already given me a description of her. Red hair, freckles, green eyes. And sure, she matched the description he gave all right. But there was just something about her that made me uneasy. I don't know why. Of course, I know all about Violet Hunter, too. Like you, Sean, I do my homework. Irish, archaeology student, good grades but nothing mind-blowing. Catholic, like you, which seems like it appealed to you. She's pretty enough, but she isn't the sort of stunner you could have had with Cynthia. She's just like everything else in your life, a shadow of what you could have. But there was something about her, something I couldn't get out of my head. Every time I looked at her, I got uneasy, like the hair on the back of my neck was standing up, and someone had just walked over my grave. I shook my head. No, surely I was imagining things. It's just some random college girl you met in a case, a nobody. I never divorced Cynthia. What connection could she possibly have with me? But I could not shake the feeling. Something was strange about that girl. and it was starting to bother me that I didn't know what. I needed to figure out how to get a closer look. A look at her face, 'cause I knew, somehow, I had seen her before. But how? How? It's impossible. You met her on a case. I never became a paranormal Pinkerton. Nothing about this added up. Well, you kept moving all day, Sean, so I couldn't get a close look at you. And by the way, you were smart to stick to crowded areas. Makes it a lot harder to kill you quietly. I made a mental note of that. But of course, at the end of the day, you went home, and Violet visited you. Home. Huh? A generous category for that dump of an apartment you live in. You're really okay showing that place to your girlfriend? Whatever. You close your curtains, of course. As if something like that would matter to a man like me. I couldn't put a spell on you, Sean, because of that ring of yours, but I could put a spell on your apartment building. Few farmers will be missing some chickens in the morning. You'd be surprised how many dead animals are around us, and we never notice. All power requires blood, but for a simple scrying spell like this, basic livestock does the trick just fine. So, I saw you, having some sort of banal argument with your girlfriend, wanting her to carry a weapon, which of course she objected to. Foolish, obviously, with a typical European attitude to guns. No, that wasn't the important part. The important part is that I got a closer look at her face when she stormed out. I'm going to pause here for a moment, Sean. I'm going to admit something to you. I was afraid. Yeah, that's right. I was afraid to see your girlfriend's face. But why? Why? Why did it matter to me? It didn't. It couldn't. But somehow I knew that if I saw her face, well, I knew everything would change. But I had to look. If I didn't, it would haunt me. So I steeled myself. And I looked at her. Really looked. And what I saw was impossible. I felt my head start swimming. My knees grew weak and I fell to the floor, first on all fours and then curled onto my side. But I barely registered what was going on. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, but one word kept coursing over and over through my head. How? 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 Because I recognized Violet Hunter. Oh yes, I recognized her. I would never forget her. Sean, I learned a few things about how you and Violet met. Alexander said she was a client on a case in Boston. Fool that I was, I didn't look more closely into it. I now see that that was a mistake. Rue Castle Manor. A place that haunts my memory. Let me tell you a story, Sean. Many years ago, decades in fact, I was invited to a meeting of the Grand Masons at Rue Castle Manor. Jacob Rootcastle was the head of the Masonic chapter of the Northeast, and he had a lot of sway in the organization in those days. I was told when I got there that there would be a test. When I asked for specifics, nobody would tell me, but they also said that if I passed, more power than I ever dreamed possible was at my fingertips. I know, you must think that sounds shady, right? But you need to understand, at this point, I had already done things. Oh, perhaps nothing truly irredeemable in your eyes, but things I could not have seen myself doing just 2 years prior. Before I lost everything. Before I made the decision to succeed. The decision you were too cowardly to make. That's all this was. This was just another test. Would I be afraid, or would I take the life laid out for me? I went to the meeting. But it wasn't in the manor. Well, not really. Instead, Rootcastle's butler took me downstairs to... well, you know, don't you? You were there too. An underground cavern, symbols I didn't understand all over the walls, men dressed in robes chanting in an unknown tongue, and in the middle of it all, on an altar, there was a girl. I made to leave. I really did. I was going to walk out, but Rucastle spoke to me. They won't believe you, you know. And even if they did, do you know how many cops are in our pocket? You can't escape us, Rousseau. That's what Rucastle said to me. I turned to look at him. What does that mean? That look in your eyes, Rousseau, your perspective is wrong. Good, evil, right, wrong, none of it matters. What matters is who has power. The question you need to ask yourself is this. Do you want to be one of the ones without power? What will we do to you if that happens? What will we do to your charming wife? Are you threatening me? I tried to sound bold, but my voice must have been shaky. I know it was. Rucastle shook his head. I'm giving you a choice. He handed me a dagger. You know what we're looking for. For a crazy moment, I considered stabbing the old man with the knife. Sometimes I still wonder if that would have been the right decision. But no, it was ridiculous. I was surrounded too, really. If I even wanted to be his enemy. Everything felt surreal. Strange fires burned on the walls. One man was weaving bizarre things into the girl's hair. She struggled and kicked, but she was tied down tight. There was no escape for her. I stood over her, knife in hand. Could I really do this? I want you to consider this, Sean. You might think you would never make this choice. But really, how different were we from each other at this point? How many choices diverge between us? 2, 3? Do you still think yourself so much better? Can you not see it? I looked at the girl's face. She moaned and screamed, but there was a gag over her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face. Her face. It was the face of Violet Hunter. Violet Hunter! Yes, it was Violet Hunter on the altar. I knew what the Masons wanted of me. I thought through my options. I considered it rationally. I could not escape. Even if I could, they would hunt me down. I couldn't rescue the girl. She was doomed either way. And if I was the one who... They promised me power. Enough power that I'd never need to be afraid. Her eyes begged me. What could I do, Sean? What options were there? Was me or her, I tell you, me or her. I stabbed her. Yes, I did it. I killed her. I stabbed her straight through her heart. You've killed people, Sean, but this was different. Very different. I remember all of it. Every detail, every sound, every smell. She gave a horrible, hacking gasp through her gag as I pushed down the knife. She started coughing, convulsing as blood spread across her chest and dribbled out of her mouth. The stench of copper permeated the air. The telltale smell of blood, and worse, made me gag. Still, I pushed down the knife. I twisted. I looked her in the eye as I killed her. Yes, I did her that much. I saw the light go out of her eyes. I stood there, twisting and twisting the dagger until, after an eternity, her body stopped shuddering. And then I retched. I did it. I killed her. I killed Violet Hunter. It's been decades since that day. The nightmares stopped years ago. So how? How is she here? How is this possible? I struggled to come to terms with it as I curled into a fetal position, shivering. Unless... Revenge? Justice? No, it was a coincidence. A trick of fate, nothing more. It could be nothing more, and yet... I saw it before me, clear and strong. A skeletal hand, reaching forward through time, across dimensions, grasping for me. Searching. Whose hand? Who? Who comes for me, even now, even here? And you, Sean, Of all the people in the world for you to end up with, it's her? Her? How can it be her? Why did you choose her? Was it because of me? Are you trying to spite me? To scare me? No, it won't work. Impossible. Ludicrous. But there she is, arm in arm, with you. You. Ah! I apologize, Sean. I lost myself for a moment. But I need to leave. I need to think about some things, reflect. You understand, I'm sure. One last thing, Sean. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you all of this. Isn't that, as the old film, well, old where I'm from, says, monologuing? Not quite. I changed my mind. I don't think your life is worth all that much after all. In truth, you're better off to me dead. So I pulled some strings, and, well, you'll see. Goodbye, Sean Russo. I don't expect us to meet again. Anyway, that's the CD the doppelganger left me. It's, I don't really know what to think of it. It's certainly something. I'm not sure what he meant by the end of that, but... Hey, hold on a second, that's weird. It's late, but there's a car outside? Something's up. I don't know who these people are or why they're at the apartment complex, but... Okay, that's not good. Look, I gotta go, Control. I'll text you with updates, but this report's going to be cut short. Sean Russo, signing off. For now.
Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. This episode was written by Anthony Marchetta and is performed by the same. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Kid Dickerson performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at Pinkerton's Ghost, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening, and good luck.